Alright, this is the third video that we're making in a series on properties of limits. What we've looked at in the first two videos was what properties of limits were, how you read them. The second one was how you use the properties of limits as you look at some graphs that are given to you. And this one is going to be a little bit of more of the same. Here, the examples that we see on the screen right now, or if you're following along with the notes that go along with this video, then what you're seeing is this is almost how it would be written, or how you would use those properties of limits when you have a table to work with. So I'll do the first example again just to get everybody going, and then if you're following along with your notes, you can just kind of keep working. If you don't have your notes, you can work the problems that you see on the screen and then just kind of, take my work and compare it with yours when you're done. So let's take a look at A. Here, A is going to say, we want to evaluate the limit of, as x approaches c, of h of x multiplied by 3 and the difference of g of x multiplied by 2. So the way that we would expand this is I would say the square root of 3 multiplied by the limit of h of x, not f of x, as x approaches c, minus 2 multiplied by the limit of g of x as x approaches c, and then when we're done, we're going to just take the square root of what we have. So here I have 3, and when I look to the table, or in this case the values that are just kind of written out for me, h of x, when you look at that, is going to give you a 4, so I replace the limit of h of x as x approaches c with a 4. And then I'm going to say minus 2 and do the same thing with g of x. Well, g of x is a negative 2, so I'll substitute a negative 2 here, multiply those values together, and I get a 12. The negative 2's will give me a positive 4, which gives me the square root of 16, which would be a 4. And technically, I guess you could say the positive or negative, but we'll just stick with the principal value. So at this point, go ahead and try working out either the rest of the problems on the screen or the rest of the problems that you see on your notes. And when you're done, come back to the video and check your work and compare them with mine. Okay, so hopefully you have done some work here, at least for B and C. And so we're going to go ahead and have to clear out my work on A, but here it is typed out for you. And so for B, we're going to say f of x multiplied by 5 times g of x. So we evaluate function f and function g as x approaches c, and then multiply those three numbers together, and we get a negative 30. And then for the c at the bottom, take the difference of 7 and g of x as x approaches c, and then whatever that difference is, we're going to square it. And in this case, we get an 81. So moving on. Here, these are following the same values. If you don't have the notes, then you might want to go ahead and just pause the video here and work out these three problems. It's using the same basic values that you saw in the last slide. If you do have the notes, hopefully you've worked through these. If you haven't, again, go ahead and pause the video and work through them first. But here, we are going to do the quotient rule and the sum rule in the numerator and the difference rule in the denominator, and then we're going to take the difference of those. And at this point in classes, usually kids are pretty well comfortable with what we're looking at here, and that's great. Okay, so here, F at the bottom, and I'll go ahead and scroll up because I think I went a little too fast on the last one. But that's how we are going to set up and evaluate those particular values. And there's a typo here that I want to point out. This is not 2 over 3, this should be 3 over 2, not 2 over 3. That's just a typo on my end. Okay, but let's go ahead and move on in our material. Again, if you happen to have the notes, you may have already worked ahead and done this one. If you haven't, then if you don't have the notes, then you notice that f of x and g of x are going to approach a different value. So essentially we're working with different functions here. But again, let's try to pause the video and see if you can work this one out, and when you're done, hit play and check your work. So here we're seeing a lot of rules being associated. We're taking the product rule, we're doing the quotient or the coefficient rule, we're doing a root rule, and we're doing a power rule, and we're doing a sum rule, and we have a whole bunch of rules that are in this one thing. But at this point here, it should be somewhat comfortable with it, I would think. At least this might have been my experience with class. Substitute the values as you evaluate them for either function f or g, and then just do your normal order of operations and simplify your numbers. So here, this is where we're going to start taking a look at composites, and actually before we get on to composites, I think I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here, and then I'll do a separate video with composites because there are some tricky things that we're going to see with those. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, let me know, and one more video to go and then we should be done.